to me, you'll never stand alone. I'm last to leave, but the first to go. Lord, make me dead before you make me whole. I fade on the fear of the devil inside, of the enemy faces in my sight. Aim with a hand, shoot with a mind, kill with a heart like Arctic ice. I am a soldier and I'm marching on. I am a soldier and I'm marching on. I am a warrior, this is my song. I am a warrior and this is my song. I'm basking the glow of the rising war. Lay waste to the ground of an enemy shore. Wade through the blood spilled on the floor. And if another one stands, I'll kill some more. Bullet in the breach and a fire in me, like a cigarette thrown to gasoline. If death don't bring you fear, I swear you'll fear these marching feet.
Welcome to Stu and the Nunn, an online radio show and podcast focused on national security, policy, politics, and selfless service. We're here to give you an honest opinion, a different perspective, and hopefully a few laughs. We do this by not only interviewing guests, but also sharing our own perspectives and asking you, the listener, to interact with us on the show chat room, via our Facebook page, and on Twitter. We would like to thank those who make this show possible and allow us to bring it to you. Our show sponsors: Warrior Media Solutions, BlueHammer.com, Mighty Oaks Warrior Foundation, Graybeard Publishing, and of course, Sheepdog Response. We would also like to recognize some of our favorite nonprofit charities who are doing great things for those who have served this country of ours. Veterans Outdoors, Mighty Oaks Warrior Foundation, PinupsForVets.com, and the Lauren F. Bruner USS Arizona Memorial Foundation. To learn more about these nonprofits and how you can donate to their awesome causes, visit our website at www.stewandthenunn.com. All right, everyone, welcome to another episode of Stu and the Nunn. We are here on September 8th. Boy, what a news day. It just never ends. But we are joined tonight. You can see, I got to change the name. I got the shard up there because I wasn't thinking. But we got Rob, the producer, joining me tonight. We had Shard on. He's listening. Man, I had so many co-hosts, I didn't know what to do. And but more importantly, we got a returning guest, Mr. Ricoh Danielson, joining us again tonight. And boy, do we have a show lined up for you, talking about a lot of great things that are current, topical. And I bet you're going to learn something tonight and hear some things you never knew. But before we get into it, let's make sure we thank our sponsors, Red Rum Sport Fishing, run and owned by our own Toby Nunn, as part of this show down in Cabo San Lucas. He survived Hurricane Faye or something yesterday. K. Yep. So he did okay. He was a little wet last night. I was talking with him, and he's doing good. And then it goes, of course, Commodity Outdoor Development Group, makers of great fishing apparel, gear for grunts, BlueHammer.com, and all the great sponsors that we have. So with all that said and done, Ricoh, welcome back, buddy. Nice to have you back on the show.
Rock and roll, man. Thank you so much for having me back, guys.
Absolutely. So it's been February? Something like that? Is that right, Rob? Last time we had
February.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it's been a while, so hopefully we've got new listeners and viewers and stuff. So and it's been a minute. So if you wouldn't mind, kind of give our folks a little bit of a background on you and kind of what brought you here and kind of what you're doing now today.
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Ricoh Danielson. I spent some time in the military, United States Army, and also National Guard as well. I was in 11 Bravo and also run around with Bushmasters 158 and then also 25 as well. From there, we actually went to a more specified OGA, got some cool experience out of that, did multi-rotations out of there in Iraq and Afghanistan, Haiti and whatnot. It was super cool. Being on the OGA private side and whatnot, very fun. And then became a U.S. Marshal Posse member. And then after that, I was like, hey, I'm kind of done, doing the high-speed Gucci stuff, right? And then, on the educational side, went to law school, got 3 masters, and then, have my own cyber firm now. And here we are.
Wow.
You forgot the coffee company.
Huh?
Yeah.
You have a coffee company too.
I do. Yeah, it's First Responder Coffee, where we actually name each coffee blend after a ransomware and also a malware threat actor. So it's not really a tribute to threat actors or malware or anything like that, but it's more of a recognized, like, hey, you have crypto, you have the warfield and stuff like that. So it's pretty cool, man.
So, are you wearing a competitor's T-shirt?
Absolutely, yeah,
Okay,
absolutely,
just make sure.
yeah.
Like I'm like
On that one.
embrace it, right? Keep my friends close, enemies close. No, those guys over there are great. But I was like, but you're wearing a Black Rifle Coffee Company shirt. But yeah, so man, not only
Yeah.
are you a pipe hitter, you're out there, you're slinging it, you've been doing it. Then you go off and get degrees and law school, and you're kind of an underachiever, dude. You should really try to do more with your life.
Really should try a lot harder, guys.
Yeah.
I was literally cutting a piece of 4,000-pound tree that fell. You know, guys, I should just do more. Yeah.
Yeah. You need to be an example to others. I mean, that's really what you should. But
I
anyways,
really need.
great to have back on. So you have this company. What does it do, and what is it special? Because it is very unique. You have a niche space that you're in.
So we do incident response and more specifically cyber ransomware negotiation and digital forensics. We started getting into the threat actor space, and actually, whenever I got done talking with y'all, I got enlisted by the Australian news, Ticker News, to be a media correspondent, and they asked me to go to Ukraine, and I went on the border for about 6 days to get more intel, threat intelligence, and stuff like that. To actually really see the real deal, and it's you definitely see, you know, by sea, by air, by land warfare, but now you have the tertiary now cyber warfare, and it's there, it's for sure. And when people kind of, oh, cyber is this, cyber is that, like it's very interesting how dynamically it's playing the field of modern warfare.
Do you work with a lot of, or do you consult or talk to people about really the threats around geotagging and the threats on people that may not realize in their personal social media lives and this and that, whatever, how they may be exposing the companies, the places they work for, that kind of thing?
Yeah, so we do a lot of modeling, threat modeling around insider threat, insider risk type deal, however you want to verb it, the politically correct term. But you know, a lot of things that has to do with the fundamental security mindset. A friend of mine, Scott Autumnbaum, he's a great speaker. He always talks about adapting the security mindset and how, you know, you going on vacation and saying, hey, I'm going to go to Libya if you want to go there. I'm going to Haiti, this and the other. And then you're like, oh, Ricoh works for X amount of companies, blah, blah, blah. And just starts, you know, the threat actors actually start gathering the threat intelligence from there at that point, and kind of puts the company at risk. And we see it all the time, man, especially in the mortgage space, because real estate mortgage is so antiquated process. It's so easy to spoof them, so easy to get them. And I just worked a romance scam in Phoenix, Arizona, where the poor lady got taken for about 500 grand.
Wow. Yeah, it's funny how people think they're not important, or they don't really do anything, or they're not, they work in whatever job they are. Maybe it's in a bank, maybe it's in a mortgage place, but they don't realize how, as they put up their favorite this and whatever, how someone can data mine their info that they don't keep secure. They don't lock down their Facebook profile or this or that or whatever. And everyone has to have passwords, and unfortunately a lot of the password systems out there use the worst thing of all, which is favorites. And it doesn't take long, right? Whether you step into somebody's cube and look around, or you just monitor their social media to figure out their dog's name, their favorite football team, right? Blah blah blah, right? And you can get in really low tech without having to get too high tech. And then, like, say, they may just be someone working somewhere, but the access they have, if that's not properly managed, could be very threatening or critical to an organization. I mean, you could talk about the Target breach that happened years ago, right? It was a third-party HVAC repairman that somehow had access to PCI data they never have had, but that's all they had to get, right?
Yeah, the threat actors are really good, especially the Chinese, Russian. They're okay, like Fancy Bear, Carbon Spider, and stuff like that. They're really good at developing corporate espionage. I mean, I think we talked about this last time. Cybersecurity and threat actors, more specifically, actually took a play out of our own book. I think it was 3- or FM-3-5, which is the counterinsurgency playbook. And man, they're taking it to our teeth. They're beating the hell out of us, and they're taking plays out of our own book on how to develop our own assets, force multiplication, You know, you go into indigenous personnel, just like going to Afghanistan, you know, give them rice, bean, food, and water, and then you turn them into your asset. And same thing, same traditional warfare.
Right, right.
Yeah, but who needs cyber warfare when the IRS will just leak your information anyway?
Thanks, IRS. I appreciate that.
or the OMB, just OMB leaks it all too, kind of. So
Yep.
you talked about
Blessed.
going to Ukraine. What was that like? How was that? Was there anything? Was there an epiphany? Was there anything eye opening that you just like surprised you or anything like that?
Not really. You know, we all been to theaters of operation, right? And then you see what you see is a different, right? Whenever we invaded Iraq or Afghanistan, we saw the refugees come out, right? And then they would go to Jordan, Syria, the Syrian border. Yeah, they set up these camps. It's no different over there. And what we don't see right now is the bigger part is where's the money going, right? You can say, you know, hey, this billions of dollars, blah, blah, blah. But in the reality situation, it is the old school. I want you to think of the GSA contractor, KO, contracting officer. It was like, okay, I need 55,000 bullets. Where they go? And it's coming from the exact same channel, same process that was in Iraq and Afghanistan. And you're like, so we just signed up all these money. Where's it going? Where's it coming from? Because the toothbrush and the cool little blanket that came from the, you know, some cool place, like you don't see that, man. You see people leaving Ukraine, especially in the border, on the western border, and what's happening is it like where are they going? And people and they're just scattering throughout the country, and it's like, oh, you know, they're undocumented. So and people are bringing them to their house, and you know, I'm not trying to play devil's advocate, but you don't ever know who you're bringing into your house,
Right,
and
right.
so it brings up another thing right there. Yeah.
Well, and you hit on the point of all this stuff going. I think I saw yesterday that Blinken showed up over there in a surprise visit and gave another see that right, Rob? $4 billion in aid, I think.
Yeah, I think it was.
Yeah, 4 billion. We throw the word billion around like we throw the word racist around in this country. It doesn't even mean anything anymore because you so much. I mean, really. I mean, before you talk about a billion, it was so unimaginable. Now we just throw billions, like they're a step above pocket change. And
Yep.
we throw 4 billion. It's just like the money we've seen spent for COVID stuff in the last couple of years here. There's tons of money that has never been tapped into, yet we keep throwing more at it. Someone's going to find a way to siphon that off. We've seen that in Iraq and Afghanistan, right? Through all the money that went over there, IGs at different levels have done these audits and come back and found, millions, if not billions or trillions, lost, like no accountability.
Yep.
That kind of thing. Do you see that happen? You see that happening in Ukraine, or have you heard reports of that?
Without a doubt, man. I see money. Here's what I'm really worried about, right? So you have billions going to Ukraine, you have billions going to these circular nations and whatnot. The structure behind these, because this is just not a clear check. It's like, hey, we'll send you 15 tanks, we'll send you aircraft, whatever. And what the U.S., what really people are not knowing is that the U.S. is like, hey, as long as you take care of this debt that I owe Cambodia from the Vietnam War, we'll go ahead and do that. So in reality, the situation is really there's no money for exchange. There's no bargain for exchange. We're just giving away debt. And the hard, undigestible part for me is that our children, or my child, and probably his child, is going to be paying for this.
Yeah.
But it's a debt that's sold upon the debt, and it's like, who's collecting this? And then where did this money come from? And my bigger thing is, vet, non-veteran. If you're a veteran running for Congress, please don't be a douchebag. Just be a good congressman. Go be a good statesman. Whatever side you're on, it doesn't matter to me. Just don't line your pocket, because I saw a bill, and when I was over there, I put the correlation. I'm like, this veteran dude signed this, and now he's a multimillionaire. Interesting.
Well, in a span of about 8 to 10 years, we went from Ukraine as one of the most corrupt places on the planet to let's give them billions of dollars, unquestioned. Nobody, both sides, Republicans, Democrats, they're just signing off on let's continue to funnel money in there, and they continue to do what politicians do, and that's fill the bills full of pork that are also benefiting them, right?
Oh.
So out of that 40 billion, let's say 10 billion goes directly to the Ukraine, the other 30 billion goes somewhere else, right? And it's ridiculous that the short attention span of the American people, they're not putting those two pieces together. We went from the Obama administration screaming about, hey, we're going to put a lot of effort into this country because it is corrupt. We're trying to clean it up, to Biden and his promising to withhold money if they didn't fire a guy due to corruption, to now Biden tossing money over the wall like it's candy at a parade.
Yeah, absolutely. I see that a lot. And the fascinating part is there's a lot of misinformation, disinformation, and whenever people are just like, "Hey, I'm going to go ahead and fund this," and as long as they don't know about this over here or this plant that I own, or I own a portion of a city now, which I recently saw, and I was like, "Where did that money come from?" And then you're right, it's padded in the bill, right? It's padded so much that it's fascinating. Or what they'll do is certain politicians will say, "Okay, it's called channeling, right? Yeah, I need you to go ahead and channel for Medicare Part B, Part C, for pharmacy reimbursement, specifically for this thing." And guess what? The only people who own this specific thing is that congressperson or that politician.
Right.
And so inherently, they're just going to be multi-layered money laundering and actually getting what they want. And it's very disheartening, man. It's very sad.
This is what's behind the whole term we've heard for the last several years of drain the swamp, right? This is why more and more people are screaming for term limits. It has become, we now see the report of, I don't know if it's been verified or not, that Nancy Pelosi is bugging the president to, when she loses out and the House flips, that she wants an Italian ambassadorship, right? Not Niger, not Venezuela. She wants it to Italy, where where she was just vacationing at. Funny how the timing worked on that. And this whole concept of our founding fathers that this whole thing was a public civil service, where it was actually a pain and a discomfort for you to go to Washington and serve in some capacity for a few years and then go back home and meld back into the populace. That's completely gone. I mean, you have Nancy Pelosi, who's on her 19th term. 19th. It's and you go and look on the Zelensky thing and the Ukraine thing, like you talked about. He went from this guy that was super, Ukraine was very corrupt and all that stuff, but the narrative was, hey, Putin is bad, Putin is terrible, and they played on the heartstrings, which is why I think everyone of all parties signed up for it, because you'll get crucified in the court of public opinion if you dare. A few have, right? Tom Cotton and a few others have spoke up, and they just, everyone wants to jump on them from both sides and everywhere of like, oh, how do you not support the poor little Ukrainian children and all that kind of stuff, right?
Did you know, like, most cyber threat actors come from Ukraine or Russia, Rutsky, which came together, right? And on top of that, most of the money laundering for a cryptocurrency to pay ransomware goes through Ukraine. Yeah, that's the weird part.
It's always been a seed of that, right? You're right. Also working in the cybersecurity world. I mean, it was always Ukraine was kind of the big, Russia too, but you're right. Ukraine always seemed to be a little bit more sophisticated and had their stuff together.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Yeah, because you have interchangeable player, different tactics, different IOCs, different TTPs. I mean, those guys, absolutely, man.
Yeah. I'm not saying what happened to Ukraine was good or they deserved it. I mean, they obviously got invaded and a lot of people have died and all that stuff. And friends of ours, Chad Robichaud and Save Our Allies, have been over there helping people, providing first aid. But you can't, I mean, just because someone's had something bad to them does not mean that, that they just deserve everything you throw at them. I mean, there's people that in this country here that, their family may get murdered or something happen. It doesn't mean they can go on a multi-state killing spree,
Right.
They still got to be held accountable.
Yeah, I had this conversation. Did you guys see the investigation where they actually moved prisoners to another prison in Kyiv, and then the next day Russia bombed them, specifically in that location? And they were saying that these prisoners were actually a sacrificial lamb, so they can induce and entice further funding. Very fascinating.
Wow, that seems so similar to what the Afghans used to do when they would attack us, and they would pile up women and children in a place they knew we were going to hit. They knew we could, we'd identify it as a point of origin, and would make it look like that, and we would take them out. And the second that the bombs quit falling, right, they were out there with cameras, broadcasting to the world how the mean Americans killed women and children. Right, that's an old play, right? That's an IO campaign 101 class.
Yeah, exactly. I found that very fascinating. And just now you have all these people, the families of the criminals or the prisoners, criminals, but prisoners. They're just like, where's my person? This, that, and the other, and now the body's nowhere to be found, which is even more disheartening, right?
Yeah.
And I find it fascinating because you have all these political plays and positions and whatnot, so they can get more money, so they can carry out more atrocities of war, which is pretty bad, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're not lacking in revenue streams at all. I mean,
No, not at all.
Task and Purpose reported this last week that what is it? Signmyrocket.com. You can go to that website and you can have your meme for a price put on one of the howitzers or something for the Ukrainians.
Yeah.
Now,
You know
I
what?
don't know if you get a picture with the the
I've
team.
seen some of it.
I
Yeah,
don't
you
know.
get they put your meme or your thing, your whatever on a bomb or missile or artillery show. Take a picture of it, and that's what you get for a couple $100. And I saw that and I was like, oh my god, why didn't I start that like 6 months ago? I could have made a business out of that. Get a couple good like street artists, you know, some of those really good graffiti people from in some inner city, and just haul them over there and be like, dude, just start painting like whatever they want. Venmo me.
They could
and
have been NFT right there, man.
Yeah,
Tell
right.
me.
Exactly. But yeah, that's a shame. I knew about the prisoner when the prison got hit. I probably just didn't take the pause thing. I wonder if something like that could have happened. I mean, on the outside, if you don't think about it, it seems very conspiracy theory, but it literally is following the same playbook. And you're right, it plays on the heartstrings, right?
Oh yeah.
And yeah, so interesting. So you were there. You were only there for like 6 days, right? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Short
So I went
time.
there for a specific tasking for cybersecurity. They had a specific question. I was like, hey, I'll go check it out. I'll be right back, guys. And I came when, and that was very, very simple for me. I was like, I'm out. That's it.
Right.
So nothing too crazy, nothing too, nothing to write home about. I actually was asked to keep quiet about it for about 2 months. So
Yeah, I can understand that. So you've worked a lot with election security in other countries, right?
yeah. So here, there's a big southern Florida county, very beautiful there, asked us to do a scenario, right, where, hey, can you go ahead and run a scenario? Was it a likelihood and probability of us, getting owned, and also manipulation? So we did that there, and also in Arizona, we proved it. And we said, hey guys, here's your results. The likelihood and probability is high. We know it is. I mean, whatever the case may be, presented to them, and we were told, thanks for your time. Cool. We saw this in other countries like Haiti, Africa, Iraq. Obviously, we saw it. But yeah, like we've done these projects before, and we show them the validation, we show them the verification, we show them the technique and the procedure, and then all of a sudden they're just like, "Thank you very much for your time. You guys have a blessed day. Bye, guys." So we're kind of told just to F off.
That's kind of disheartening because I thought you were going to talk about you're doing election security in some foreign third world piece of shit country, and you just like, no, a county in Florida, right?
Nope. It is one of the biggest counties in Florida, and then also one of the biggest county in Phoenix.
In a very, both very pivotal swing states, very pivotal to our election process. For sure. So, but you've been involved with in helping elections in other countries, right? And securing and observing stuff, maybe Iraq, Afghanistan. What do you?
Yeah, Haiti, biggest one.
Okay, so what are your thoughts? I mean, when we saw what happened in 2020, and even in the previous ones with Gore, Bush, and all that stuff, but when we looked at what happened in 2020, I was pretty irate personally for a number of reasons. But when I'd go back and say, how in the hell do the people of Iraq have a more secure election than they do? I mean, we don't have to show. Look, in the state of New York now, where unfortunately I live, you don't have to show an ID to vote, but you have to show one now to buy a can of Cool Whip if you're under 21 years old, right?
That makes a little reasonable sense.
It makes, yeah, exactly, right? But how is it that people lined up, braved IDs, did all this stuff just to get their finger purple? How could that be a more solid and secure election than what we do in the country here? Do you? I've always said we should go back to that. You go to vote anywhere in this country, stick your finger in some ink that can't come off for like a week.
Yeah, that's true. So it goes back to a couple different things: punishment and consequence, right? The reason Iraq was able to do that and actually go out there and do their thing and whatnot, I believe that they outweigh the punishment and consequence. In the United States, if you do election fraud or if you cheat or whatever, what is the real consequence? What is the real punishment? It doesn't really matter, right? So I'm going to give you an example. When I was in Jordan, I met this gentleman, and he was a CISO of a private organization, and he showed me this app. There's 2 applications that the Saudi government make you have, right? And one of them is for you, for your family, your documentation, your car, your everything. The other one is for voting and also medical rights, right? And so they said, if you don't have this, you will be in jail for 1 year. So the consequence and punishment here, like, what happens if you don't vote? Nothing. What's the punishment? Nothing. Doesn't really matter, right? Either way, does your vote really count? No. If you do election fraud, what really happens? I can tell you right now, nobody's spending time in jail, even if they get charged, right? This
Well,
is me putting my lawyer hat.
it's a political tool as well, much like immigration, much like, you know, anything else you want to put out there. It's a political tool where you can pit one side against the other when you start talking about voter IDs or securing elections, or, you know, it's okay for one group to question an election, but completely, you know, these are insurrectionists if they question election and they're not part of this other side. So it's a huge political tool that is used against the American people.
Absolutely, yeah, it's created a divide. We've actually done this in other countries, like when we invaded Iraq and Afghanistan. Like, it's pure psyops here. You know, you get this person against this person, you get Ahmed against Ali, same thing. You know, you get the Danielson versus the Nixons, whatever the case may be. It's the same political strategy, and it's very sad that we're actually using them against our own self.
Yeah, yeah, and it's funny you may bring up the what they do in Saudi Arabia. They do that in Australia too. In Australia, every citizen, right? It's mandatory you vote. And when I was there several years ago, I spent a couple months there. I was like, wow, that's one way to make sure everybody has it. But then I kind of thought about it. I know a lot of idiots that probably shouldn't. Well, one shouldn't even procreate, much less vote, right? So it's kind of to me, it's a double-edged sword. But in Australia, if you're a U.S. citizen and you don't vote, they will show up, and I think it starts with like a ticket and a fine and all stuff. And if you continue not to vote, you will end up in jail. So everyone has to vote. That's a citizen. That's great, and the fact that you make sure everyone's involved in the process. But you know, if they don't care, whatever, they could, you know, completely throw something off within the country with no accountability. Like they don't care who wins or whatever. So it's kind of, we have terrible voting turnout here. Well, at least to 2020, because all of a sudden, you know, somebody got 81 million votes, more than anyone's ever gotten before.
Well, overnight, like that.
Overnight. Round 2:30 in the morning. But you know, in reality, and because you know, you can say what you want about that, but I personally don't feel all those are valid. But if you look at all of our elections, midterms, especially local election stuff, people just don't turn out. And it's so, as a soldier, as you guys are, and a veteran, you know, that has seen what people in Iraq, Afghanistan, or other countries would love to be able to have that right. And again, they would brave walking through ID Alley or whatever, to see our own people not even care enough. Really, at the area it matters most. It's local elections. National's national. Like you say, electoral college. Look, you know, state of New York, every Republican could turn out and vote a Republican, and it ain't gonna matter in this state because we go off electoral college. But in those county executives, local assemblies, school boards, all that kind of stuff, as we saw in 2020, some of those people were making some decisions that affected the national.
Oh yeah.
My mother-in-law quit voting national years ago when she was standing in line to vote and they had already announced the winner.
Oh.
And she said, well, what's the point of me voting if they've already announced who won? And so from that point forward, she hasn't voted in a national election.
That sucks.
So yeah. This is Troy's personal opinion. I'm mentioning yours, Rico and Rob. I've been anti-electoral college for as long as I can remember, probably 20 plus years. I've been against the electoral college because I've always looked at it as, you know, that was there for a reason, because the American, back when America was founded and we had that, people couldn't get to polls. It was just different. There wasn't transportation. People weren't educated, blah, blah, blah. But to have that be the only election in this country that required that the popular vote, the actual count, doesn't go towards it, to me is robbing this country. Well, one, if we did have it where every vote was counted, one, you wouldn't have politicians just worrying about 8 or 10 or 15 swing states. They have to go fight for every vote, right? And right. Two, I think the turnout would probably jump upwards of 15 to 20%. And this is my speculation or opinion. We lost your video, Rico. Hopefully, so there you are. I think it would jump 15 or maybe 20% just because people go, crap, then my vote counts. I'm going to be in that big tally, right? People today, like say, there's conservatives in New York that do not vote. There's Democrats in Texas or Alabama or whatever that do not go vote because they say, why? My state's already going to go red or blue. But if the person running for president fought for every vote and there was an electoral college, okay, maybe that means Hillary would have won in 16. Well, it is what it is, but that's what the people voted.
Right.
That's me. I know some people say, well, then New York and LA and all that would pick all this stuff. But I don't think so because I think we would see a bigger turnout in the flyover states that could make a difference. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so that's actually really interesting because I think it speaks to the kind of like the moral fiber of it, right? It gives kind of almost the integrity behind it and allows the power of the people to kind of dictate or give some sort of influences versus the latter. That's just I try not to get too far into it because my mind starts going somewhere else, but I believe it gives an alternative solution and also alternative empowerment.
What do you think, Rob?
Well, I think you alluded to it where I stand. I'm pro for the Electoral College for that simple reason that New York, Houston, and San Francisco alone would outweigh probably 20 different states when you start talking about Idaho, North Dakota, South Dakota, Wyoming. Those three cities alone have more populations than about 20 states combined. And so when you're deciding an election out of those cities alone, Wyoming never gets a vote no matter how they vote, right? So even if their state voted 100% for a Republican, the other three cities that did vote, which are prime Democrat. So I think that's.
I mean,
that's
that is the flip side to it, and I've looked at it, but I think, and I guess we wouldn't know unless it happened, right? But I think that with that happen, I think the greater turnout of voters could swing the difference, right? Because also people don't go vote if they don't think it's going to make a difference. I mean, they just they're lazy, like my person's going to win, right? I'm going to roll back over and fire up a bong or something. They're not going to, But if people are fired up, which right now we see that in the GOP, right? I think they just did 50 million registrations or something I saw yesterday. I mean, people are fired up. Then they're going to show up. But at least everyone could say, I had a vote. Because people that go vote, for example, I'll just use New York, that are conservative, they vote. They know it's for no reason. I know people that don't vote. Some in the last couple elections did just say, well, at least I put my name down. But I knew people that, in the 2020 election that said this is at 40-something years old, were bragging it was their first time voting in a presidential election. That's not something for me that you brag about. That should be something you don't tell anybody, right? But they were so fired up that they did. You should always go do it because you never know. Look, we had a Republican governor in the state of New York before I moved here, right? Pataki was here. Anything can happen. Places flip and all that kind of stuff. I just, if you've done election security, Ricoh, you've seen, I mean, there's no such thing as electoral college, I don't think, outside of the U.S., right? No concept.
No, there's not, man. There's actually only in the United States we have that as a premise, if you will. And in other countries, it's like you get what you get, right? Like if you take the country of Jordan, like you don't even get an election, you just get the king. That's just kind of the way it is, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So we talked about that. Obviously, we talked a little bit about narrative and propaganda. We talked about, with Ukraine. Do you see that same kind of thing in other countries, or do you get called in to help where other countries have political parties? Like, look, in our country, right, the left controls a lot of the media. They can get the talking heads on there from most of the networks to say whatever they want. Do you see that same kind of manipulation and alignment to political processes in countries, or do they try to stay really agnostic?
No, they actually engage us quite a bit. They're like, hey, what is the likelihood or what's the probability of cybersecurity being an issue in our elections? And we lay it out for them based upon what we know, the threat actors and also threat landscape. And they're just like, okay, cool, thank you. And they'll take that information and kind of leverage it to leverage their campaign. I've seen that quite a bit. We actually got engaged by an Asian Pacific country, a very small one, and they were like, "Hey, let's kind of run the numbers with our threat actors. What is our landscape kind of looking like?" So we're starting to get into that space. We're trying to be very left about it. Like we don't want to be in that political landscape type crap. We just want to do cyber forensics and threat hunting and ransomware negotiation. But we've been engaged quite a bit on that one, especially when it comes to misinformation, disinformation.
Well, I would have to think there's probably a handful of countries that are at the very top of the list of places that bad actors would want to affect, right? And
Mhm.
so that's probably UK, that's the US, that's probably possibly Canada, uh, not Russia because Russia's the one doing most of it, not China because China doesn't have elections. So there's probably a very small set of countries that are actually the targets, whereas these other ones can just have elections without interference because it's not really of consequence on the global scale.
Right, or they target the smaller countries, like if you take Nicaragua, if you take Ecuador, even parts of Mexico, right? There's a lot of heavy influencer. When I went to Jalisco, I actually met a Russian dude, and I'm pretty sure he was Spetsnaz or a spy of some sort. And I'm like, "What do you do? What are you doing here, man?" And I just knew what he was there for. He was there to set up shop. He was there to kind of use the money to influence certain political gains and also stuff like that because that was a pivot point to the United States.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, right? Because when the whole thing was happening with the Russia Gate and all the accusations against President Trump about Russian influence and all that stuff, I remember I would talk with friends about like, you don't think we do that? Like that's what this country we have done that since probably
Years.
the first chance that we realized we could do it. Probably 40s if not early, right? Probably in some of the European countries and stuff like that. Like that's a standard use case, if you would, of our intelligence agency against foreign states, just like it is ours. It was like we're not holier than thou. Like we do this all the time. In fact, we've been open about it in some places.
Exactly. I think it was just done on horseback. Now it's done on your iPhone.
Right. Exactly. Or just a server sitting in a third world country, just doing all kind of stuff. Right. Now,
Exactly.
so
Well,
you're
the bad part is now that we have our own agencies doing it internally, right?
Oh yeah.
Where
yeah
you just
yeah
had Facebook announce that
good
they were
point.
contacted by FBI, to suppress what they were. The way he put it, it was like they didn't tell him directly, but they said, "Hey, there's going to be some misinformation, some Russian disinformation coming down." Twitter, Facebook, Meta, whatever you want to call it. So it's a bad state of affairs when our own
Government.
government is doing it internal to our country. It's horrible when we do it to other places, but it's a really bad state of affairs when they do our own.
Yep. You're very true, man. It's very, very true. Very sad. I've seen it on our side where you'll have certain government agencies be like, "Hey, this, and this are things you need to omit," and it's like, "Come on, dude! Like, you know what you're doing," but they won't say it, right? Or they have an order saying, "Hey, you can't use these words. Let's not talk about these things," and they say client confidential. I'm like, "Come on, guys! Like, in reality situation, you know what you're doing here. You as a person, you as a so-called patriot, you as the agent itself, like, come on, dude, you know what you're doing." But in reality, like, "Hey, I got the badge, I got my orders." I'm like, "You're not following orders. You don't have to follow those orders. Come on, dude. You know."
Yeah, so you've been doing a lot of stuff overseas, and speaking of overseas, you've got a new location. Let our listeners, viewers know kind of how you're expanding. Man, your business is growing. How's that going, and what's going on there?
Yeah. Yeah. So recently, about 3.5 weeks ago, I actually gave a keynote to the King of Jordan. I met some of the royal family, and then also met some other people from Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Dubai, and Yemen. And I've been invited to actually set up business there and operations. So I'm actually opening up a office there. I'll probably be there maybe every 4 weeks type deal, flying back and forth. But I believe that their cybersecurity and our cybersecurity are two different things. Our cybersecurity is more business focused, like, "Hey, it's on the business, you should do these things." There, it's the king says everything will be in the cloud by 2024 within the geofence of Jordan, and everybody will be doing cybersecurity. Do it or you're punished. So you have a different different motive there, right?
Wow, we introduced Sarbanes Oxley in 2002, and to be implemented by 2005, and it's now 2022, and people still can't comply with that government regulation.
Yeah, that's. I was like, "Hey, man, going to the cloud, going wherever you want to be." It's a very, very aggressive move. And I'm talking to some of these. There's a lot of doctors out there, like data scientists, doctor of this, doctor of that. But whenever you talk to the tactical, technical level, we have this huge gap, especially in the Middle East. Like, I call myself the old timer, right? Where I know how to do it, I know how to do the technical, and I know how to lead a strategy. And now 1, 2, 3 generations later, I'm meeting guys, especially in the Middle East, who are 2021. They're like, I want to do cyber. I'm like, well, you don't know anything, so let's get you in there.
Yeah, you got to cut your teeth. You need a lot of weekends in server closets and sitting in front of a Unix terminal and things like that before you can start saying
3 a.m. phone calls.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
exactly. Yeah, but interesting. So you're expanding over there. Where else is your business located? Is that your first overseas location?
Yeah, so we actually met up. I met with the biggest incident response firm in the world, and they're in the $1 billion, right? And the guy who owns the Middle Eastern region of anywhere from Afghanistan to China to Jordan to Lebanon, he's like, Rico, we don't even touch cybersecurity in your small portion of the pie because there's not enough money for us. Because this person, this business entity was like, we only deal with $100 million breaches and above. And I'm like, hey man, I'll do $10 million breaches all day, buddy. So
10 of those adds up. So
hey man, yeah. So we'll be in Jordan, not necessarily Lebanon. Lebanon right now is too fragile. The economy and also the government's too fragile. It's being wishy-washy. But more than likely Dubai, and then more than likely probably setting up another shop in Saudi Arabia.
So do you speak as part of your time in the army? Did you go to language school? Do you speak any Middle Eastern languages fluently?
I do speak so I speak a little bit of Arabic. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Most of us in the military, we wherever we go, we learn the bad words. It doesn't doesn't go far beyond that for the most part. But yeah. So I mean, I think we talked about this before. If I remember back to February, which is amazing that I can. But and if I didn't, I'm just going to repeat myself. But I mean, I've kind of the same pattern and same background as you, military, coming into cybersecurity and IT. But I mean, I think it's just a great example. That's why I was glad to have you back on, to just show to people, look, this, you can be a trigger puller, you can do whatever, active duty guard. I was 11 Charlie and 11 Bravo myself, and and do all that, and then Brent, you don't have to be a cop. You don't have to be a security guard or whatever, right? You've got degrees. You've got all this. You're running this business now with an international footprint. Have you found yourself talking to any veteran military groups, or have you been invited to come talk to folks about how you made that transition?
So I was it Tuesday? Yeah, Tuesday. I actually just gave my 8th USO talk. So I talk for the USO, and I actually talk about the veterans transitioning to cybersecurity in the cybersecurity space. I'm not gonna lie, man. I narrowed my speech down to 10 minutes, and I'm like, give me the questions. Let's go. I want to hear everything. And last turnout, we had about over 400 attendees virtually, and they're the questions. You should see my LinkedIn. I had over 200 requests just from that day. The ones prior were 300, 400. And I'm very honored just to be there with them, because I want to understand where are they. And I'm talking to lieutenant colonels who reached out to me like, Rico, what do I do? I'm like, sir, I should be fucking saluting you. What's going on, sir? Right. And then I had a sergeant major, and then I had a young PFC, and then I had a spouse. And I was like, okay, like I know I'm a pretty cool guy, but I'm not that cool, but I just have answers, man. I'm like, hey, tell me what it is. Okay. Should I get a SAN cert or a degree? Where are you? Are you lieutenant colonel? Just go with the degree, sir. You'll be running the executive steering committee in no time. That's what you want to do anyways, right? You'll be making 100 grand a year, versus the person or who's like, hey, I don't have a degree, but I'm really good at IT. I'm like, dude, go get the cert, then get the degree, So stuff like that. I'm trying to get one at Fort Campbell, a live speech there at Fort Campbell. See if we can do a USO talk type deal.
Yeah, awesome. We definitely need to talk after the show sometime. It's there's so many similarities in what we're doing. I mean, right now, you're familiar with the Army CSP program, the DoD CSP,
Yep.
Civilian Skills Program. So my company, I just am bringing on now my second. So the first one was an E5, and I brought him on, and he is now a full-time project manager for us, overseeing software implementation and stuff. And I'm getting this captain now who is on, and the CSP program, allows the military gives them up as essentially as a free intern to a business, right? And they do all kind of businesses and stuff. And they pay they're still in the Army, and they're, I think all the branches do it. We just mostly work with the Army, but they give them, they pay their full pay and benefits, and about 6 months before it's time for their ES or whatever it is, they're resigning their commission or whatever, and they get their free intern for the company, right? So we bring them in. and train them, and then put them to work, and then pretty much at the end of that time, unless there's a reason not to, we extend them an offer. And I'm bringing my second guy. He just came out of a tanker company command, and he's going to be walking right in. Actually, I think we presented the offer yesterday or today for him to start with us in October as a full-time employee. Walks right out of the Army, has a safety and security for his family. Not going to worry about how he's going to put beans on the table, and walks right into a job, applying mostly the soft skills that the military teaches us. Nothing. I'm looking for technical people too, but right now I need the people that have task and people and organizational management to run projects and run engagements and do that kind of, which is stuff that a tank company commander has been signed for and run more and more high stress situations than anyone's ever going to do in a software deployment.
Yep, it's true.
I don't know if that's something you've looked at or have talked to, but that's something definitely want to chat with you at a later time about this, because that could be good.
I'll send you the deck that I use for the USO, so you have it. But one of the key slides that I have in there is like, hey, I can get you a job making $200,000 a year. That's easy. But the skill sets that you have, like the soft skills, like really, I call myself Mr. Positive when I work with people. Like everyone's like, why are you so damn positive? I'm like, dude, this is easy. This is awesome, man. And that's why I'm like, hey, man, being positive in IT and more so cybersecurity will get you so far.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, at my previous employer, we did meetings with different individuals transitioning out, and one of the things we did was review resumes and things like that. And there's a lot of those soft skills that we acquire that we don't always equate to the civilian world, but are actually do translate very well. And it's amazing how many individuals going through the transition process don't even think down that I'm very punctual, I'm very attentive to detail, I'm very I clean shaven, I'm coming to work presentable, I'm just the little things like that you want out of an employee, that they don't even think of to translate, especially in an interview process. We would not only do resume reviews, but we would do mock interviews and things like that. So
I don't know if the transition.
One of the
do you find that the transition people or whatever at bases are I mean, I think some probably hit on that because they know maybe they've rode both sides of the fence, but it seems like most always went on the technical side. What did you do in the Army? That's what you can. At least it was back in my day.
Yeah, I told them not to sell themselves on that one. I'm them like, hey, dude, I'm a prime example. I'm like, dude, I'm a grunt, man. Like, I'm not supposed to be here. I know that. And when people are like, well, what'd you do in the military? I was like, well, what does it matter? Like, I'm over here doing your ransomware negotiation. Like, what does it really matter? But if you really want to know, sure, here you go, man. And I tell people all the time, I'm like, just because you're an 11 Bravo, 11 Charlie, 92 Delta, or 77 Fox, it doesn't matter. Like, you can actually pave your own, carve your own future and path through here. And going back to the statement you said earlier was, you're right, man. Like a lot of and I'm not trying to bag on the younger workforce now, but like a lot of the younger workforce, they're just, I interviewed this guy, we're doing this project as a pen tester, and he showed up, he immediately sat down. I'm like, what happened? And I was like, you just look like you just get out of a double bag. He's like, Rico, I need an energy drink. And I'm like, you do realize we're meeting a client, right? And he goes, yep, I just need an energy drink. And I'm going to show him. And I said, dude, these guys are bankers, like dress the part. So that's why I appreciate some of the military guys. I mean, or even females, they will come squared away, right place, right time, right uniform, real easy.
They had many a first sergeant tell them, if you ain't 10 minutes early, you're late, right? So,
yeah. And you better be prepared. And, right. I see that very different dichotomy, and also the juggling skill sets. Civilians, they have a great counterpart. They have great skill sets, but if you accompany the awesome skill set with the punctuality and the soft skills with the military person, you're good. You're Gucci, man.
Yeah, it's funny.
One of the biggest. Oh, I'm sorry, Troy.
No, go ahead.
But one of the biggest things that I've been able to take advantage of is the multinational partnerships that I've worked in different multinational places, because business today, especially like what you do in the IT world, with different nations, right? And a lot of companies now will hire, whether it's India, whether it's Singapore, whether it's down in Central and South America. These companies are hiring people, globally to do the work. And when you've got somebody that has some sort of experience working with foreign nations, that's a tremendous asset.
Yep. True. Very true.
Again, it goes into the interpersonal skills, conflict resolution, conflict management, and Rico, you kind of hit on it earlier when you said, I shouldn't be here. I'm just having a blast. It really takes me back to when I first got out of active duty, and I went to work for an IT company within the first week. And people, I got in there and doing desktop support and just, helping people fix drivers and install things and doing that kind of stuff. And they were like, "What'd you do in the? Oh, you were in the army. What'd you do? Did you do computers?" Like, no, I jumped out of planes. I was an instrument. They were like, "What?" They were like, and people say they're like, "Really?" I'm like, "Yeah, I jumped. That's what I." And I was still in. I was in the guard. I was still jumping and stuff. I'm like, "Yeah, I'm an infantryman. I'm a ground pounder." Like, you didn't work in like technology. And like, how'd you get this? I'm like, picked it up, had a knack. I mean, I don't, and it was just, people would be stressed out. And they'd be like, "Man, you got all this on your plate. You're doing stuff. How come you're always in a good mood?" I'm like, "I'm in khakis with a cup of coffee hanging out in the break room. Like I could, 6 months ago, I had a 70-pound ruck going through Fort Polk and covered in poison ivy. Like this is totally cool. Like I'm totally good with it." And I'm like, or I was up at 4:30 in the morning doing a 5-mile run and a pro mask, and they'd be like, "What?" And I was like, "This is too easy. Like, how could you not be happy, right?"
Yeah.
And then even when I came back from Afghanistan in 06, still to this day, my managers that work for me and stuff, and I talk to them, I'm like, "Hey, you're not getting blown up. You're not getting shot at. It's only software. No one's dying. It'll be here tomorrow. Like, you don't have to stress over it."
All right.
I was literally telling some people that last week. Like, this isn't worth stressing over. It's all going to be here. No one's dying.
Yeah. In 2014, I got shot in the back when I was on an OGA gig, and ever since then, man, I'm just like, "It's cool, man. Like, you're fine. Don't worry, bro. You'll be all right."
Well, in the IT world, there's nothing you can't. Nobody can mess up something so bad you can't fix it, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's through backups, whether it's through reinstallation, whether it's through reconfiguration, whether it's through whatever.
Yeah.
You can't mess it up. Once it's digital, it's there.
Ones and zeros, right? It's all ones and zeros. Somebody can fix it, right? It's yeah. It may cost someone more time or more money or something like that, but at the end of the day, look, if someone, it could be the most critical meeting in the world, it could be the whatever timeline, but someone just had their family member was just in a car accident. They're out the door. They're off the call. They're gone, right? That's most important. And I think that's what people need to see. And I have to remind myself that sometimes. Working in high stress, I got a lot of customers, but sometimes sometimes step back, look at myself, go, just walk away for a second. It's gonna be okay. And I've told people that work for me, and whether it's in IT or anything, like, you know what? In 6 months, this customer is not going to remember you. You're not going to remember what we do. Like, it's not. It doesn't matter. Not what you got.
I personally think that's one of the biggest positives that came out of COVID, right? So the ability to work remote and the stress level when you've got remote workers and the ability to work remote like that has come way down. I've been remote for a little over a year, full time. Well, almost 2 years now, full time. And if I need to take care of something, I go take care of something. But my employer knows that when I need to be at work, things are getting taken care of. They're still getting taken care of, and I'm not sitting in front of a monitor in a cube farm like a gopher somewhere.
Yeah.
That was the biggest from the USO. That was the biggest thing. They were like, "Rico, what about work remote?" And I'm a big proponent. Like, you should work remote. If not, go find your own self a job or make your own business, because COVID displayed to the world that everyone can work remote and you can do it effectively. And I really believe if you're working for an organization that does not allow you to work remote, then you might want to rethink it out, because the quality of life, everyone readjust their balance. I'm like, "Hey, this is, my family is actually really important to me. Like, I hate I'm not going to do that no more." So.
Yeah. I mean, financial services industry, federal government were two that were, and state, local governments were ones that couldn't even conceive working remote for the most part, right? And it's openers. I mean, I have federal government customers that their people are still remote. Some are saying they're not going back into their buildings. They realized they could measure productivity in ways besides just seeing someone at the water cooler. They didn't have to just put their eyes on them and say, "Oh, okay, they're," because that doesn't mean anything. They're still over playing solitaire in their cube, right? So I think that was a good thing that came. But how did that come with your Was there any impact from COVID, positive or negative, in what you do?
Yeah.
The increase in business, I'm assuming.
Yeah, increase. My business went up 138% within 6 months, and then I didn't even bother fighting it, man, because I saw other bigger employers that like, I want this person to deal, and I'm like, cool. Whenever you let them go or they quit, let me know. I'll hire them, and that sure shit happened, man. People were like, hey, Rico, can I just come work for you part time? I was like, how about this? I'll pay you what you're paying for. Give me what you paid, right? And then, however, you just work on a consultant basis. And dude, I realized hiring people on a consultant basis, give them the power and the tools and the resources that they need to work on their time. And you say, hey, I need it by Monday morning. I'm game, man. I'm game. And then people from the biggest incident response firms like of the world would come to me like, I want to work for you, Rico. And I said, dude, you work for the world's best. And they're like, I don't care, man. I want to come work for you. And so I don't even bother. That it's a non-negotiable. You get paid if you're like a senior person. You're in the highest six figures, and you're 100% remote.
Do you have mostly are they most like 1099s, contractors? Or do you have full-time
Yeah,
employees?
about 80% of my employees are 1099s. Just because the incident comes in, you're there for like 6 weeks, and then incident's gone over, right? So there's that. But yeah, I mean, keeping employees just doesn't make any sense anymore on the financial books anymore, and also from a long-term perspective. What I think is going to happen, a lot of the workforce is going to go to 100% remote, 100% consultant basis, and it's going to empower people to kind of adopt more of a European methodology of a holiday. Like, hey, I'm going to take a holiday for 3 months, right? That's just what I'm going to do. So
Yeah, it's gonna be
that's
interesting to see how this job market turns out. Right, we're seeing a lot of people didn't return to work after COVID. A lot of them are getting just handouts. That's why. But even now that all that is pretty much shut off, it sounds like there's still a gluttony of open jobs, and they don't have the people. No one's applying for them. No one's filling them. I
But
don't
So
know.
you still have quite a bit of the old guard in some of these larger companies that refuse to go to that remote model, right? And
yeah.
and I left a company like that. They were like, no, we're not a remote company. When this is over, we want you back in the office. And I'm like, great, see ya. And here I am. So there's a lot of your larger companies that have these older generation individuals sitting at the tops making those decisions that just aren't allowing for it.
So I call it bean bags and positivity, right? Positivity and popsicles and bean bags and Coca-Colas. I have so many young consultants who come work for me and they'll be like, hey, dude, if you pay me just a fraction, but just be cool and give me a popsicle and positivity and a bean bag and Coca-Cola, I'll produce. And they do. And their biggest complaint is like, don't be a stuffy CEO. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool, man. Awesome. I won't be.
Wow, that's awesome. Yeah, it's definitely an interesting field, and like I say, you're in a cutting edge space, and a space that's not going away. I mean, it used to be said, right? People, you could work in a restaurant, or you could, someone that works in a funeral home will always have a job, right? Because people are always got to eat, always going to die. But today's world, so I mean, IT and systems are absolutely the most critical thing any organization has to run. That has any kind of making any kind of money. Even the small business, even the smallest of business of 3 or 4 people they may rely on systems that are hosted in the cloud and stuff, but they rely on those. And I mean,
Oh, yeah.
to me, it's right there with everything else. And as far as critical, organizations can't run without it. Nobody's doing stuff in triplicate. They're not doing stuff with carbon paper. I mean, those days are all gone.
I'm a solutions architect, so all I deal in is cloud.
Hey.
And so I'm seeing just more and more and more and more and more, especially as some of these, as I said, the older generation, they start retiring, and you start getting some of that fresh blood in there that are like, we don't have to have a data center here that I'm paying for not only the licenses and everything on the hardware that I have, or the upkeep on the hardware, but the electricity, the having to keep that data center cool, having to keep it running 24/7, have to keep security access to it, have to all of that. I can now offload some of that, and I can reduce some of my staff. I can work remote. I can take advantages of things. It makes me a little more agile. I can pivot faster. I don't have to, uh, buy hardware on a regular basis. So it's really, I mean, that's the direction things are going.
Yep, absolutely, man.
Yeah.
Solutions architect are very high demand, especially for my clients.
Right now, very high demand.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. So what should we be looking out for as you look forward over the next 12 months, 18 months? Any predictions, any guessing where you think going to affect us positively or negatively in the country or the world? I mean, are you seeing other threats out there, threat actors that you think aren't maybe getting news right now, but could be something that people should be concerned with or keep an eye out for?
Yeah, I think the Middle East is going to be a next big market right now, especially for developing cybersecurity. There's a lot of, I believe what's going to happen is just like, any special operations you do in Iraq and Afghanistan, the good people, the bad people will take the good training and they'll go develop their own threat acting group. And the problem is the student cannot be the master, right? So I'm the master of these things. And I'm not trying to sound egotistical, but I've actually had a couple employees kind of turn, or contractors turn, and they thought they were amazing stuff and they just get caught up, right? So I see the same trend happening in the Middle East whenever I set up shop over there. The thing here in the United States, I think we're going to see a lot more disinformation, misinformation here cranking up in December. We're going to see probably a different type of election, more digitized, more digital, more driven in regards to pitting each other against each other. So I would be more conscious on the threat actor, such as the media, which is a big threat actor, trying to influence the local government, election, and also more so trying to provide you mis-stock information like, oh, Ricoh uses shampoo, not body wash. And you're like, oh, he's a bad man, right? So stuff like that, you're going to start seeing more homegrown stuff there.
Interesting. Okay, that'll be something I definitely will keep an eye out for. That'll be something to watch, especially like you talk about the local. If people start to realize local elections where it's at, especially after what we saw in 2020, right? Governors and assemblies and state assemblies made decisions, right, that affected. Look at Pennsylvania. Look at a few places where they just made rule changes at the last minute, and it affected the national election. It'd probably be something to watch. Interesting. Cool. Hey, well, you've got a lot going on. And we've talked about a lot. Anything in particular we didn't cover? Anything you have happening you want to make sure our viewers and listeners know about?
No. Other than that, I'm just honored to be here with you guys. I'm probably going to work with you guys again, get on another show with you guys, and then it's just amazing being with you guys. That's all.
Yeah. We are definitely gonna. We're gonna be talking after sometime soon. I want to catch up with you because we do work in the same space, and I think we could find some synergy there for sure. So.
I do want to add, we don't just learn the curse words in different languages. I can order beer in about 15 different languages.
Hey, there we go, man.
there you go. It isn't just the curse word. It's whatever words we need to that culture, I guess you could say, right? There's words I know in Korea that I wouldn't necessarily say in Afghanistan, for example. But we'll leave it at that. True. But anyways, hey, Ricoh, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Thank you, everyone, for joining us that were here watching, listening. We did come on an hour earlier. That's because go Bills. Tonight's opening of the NFL season. So my beloved Buffalo Bills are playing in LA tonight. I don't know if they have AC or not. I'm not sure if they do. But
may not have power.
May not have power. Everyone has to hold up their phones to light up the stadium. But anyways, want to thank you guys so much for joining me, Ricoh, Rob, and thank you everyone for tuning in tonight, for being here. Join us next week here on Stu and the Nunn, 8 o'clock Eastern. That's the planned time, 8 o'clock Eastern here. Don't forget, next week I will be sitting down face-to-face with Scott Mann, author of Operation Pineapple Express and founder of Pineapple Express, who's been all over the media with his book that is now a New York Times bestseller. It hit that yesterday. I'll be with Scott in his home next week interviewing him. So be sure to tune in. That is going to be a great one to hear all about that. And all right, there we go. Ricoh, Rob, thank you guys so much. Everyone have a great
Ricoh.
night.
Rock and roll. See you guys.
See ya. Well, that wraps up another episode of the Stu and the Nunn Show, and we hope you had as much fun listening to it as we did hosting it for you. Don't forget to like our Facebook page and follow us on Twitter. You can find all these links at stewandthenunn.com. We will talk to you again next Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Central. Also, we'd like to thank our sponsors, Commodity Outdoors, Veteran Outdoors, Enlisted 9 Fight Company, Warrior Media Solutions, and BooHammer.com. Thank you again, and have a good night.